Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for listening to the program. Joined now by the leader of the United States Senate, Senator Mitch McConnell. Good morning, Senator. Welcome back.
Good morning, Hugh. Glad to be with you.
The health of your 99 colleagues and of your staffs, I know, is first and foremost on your mind. To your knowledge, is everyone doing okay?
As far as I know, as you know, I had 4 members either in quarantine or one tested positive, which is why 4 of my members missed the unanimous vote last week. As far as I know, they're all doing well.
It's good. Now, that unanimous vote, until 2 weeks ago, I had thought the finest hour of your tenure as leader of the Senate would have been the decision to hold open the seat vacated by the untimely death of Justice Scalia. Now I think it's that rescue package. I'm wondering in your own mind where you rank the relative importance of those 2 events.
Well, they were both quite important, no question about it. Very different situation. This was a genuine national emergency, and trying to put together a $2 trillion bill in a week was really a Herculean task, as you can imagine. The way I thought it would work best would be for those of us in the Senate to try to get started on a bipartisan basis, and we were doing really quite well, as you may recall, until the Speaker of the House decided to insert herself into the process, which created a couple of days of unnecessary partisan sniping. But we got past that, and in the end, I think the best evidence is that there was not a single vote against it. It was a genuine emergency, and we rose to the occasion. I was really proud of my colleagues.
I have never seen 2 days in the Senate like those 2 days. I actually was watching on C-SPAN because it was unprecedented, with perhaps the exception of the Kavanaugh and Thomas hearings, but this was on the floor. Have you ever seen anything like it, Leader?
Well, occasionally people lose their tempers. I think, what really is noteworthy about this is we pivoted from the most partisan thing you could possibly be involved in, the impeachment of a president, to a unanimous vote on a $2 trillion package, all within a couple of months. So we did have an outbreak of kind of the old-fashioned impeachment partisanship, which I think was generated by the Speaker trying to, get into the Senate process.
There is obviously going to be a need for another bill. I look at the restaurant industry, where 3% of restaurants have closed completely forever, maybe double digits. I look at the broadcast industry, some segments of it without revenue. Will there be a phase 4, and how will that develop, Leader McConnell?
Well, I think we'll have to wait and see. Remember, this bill was only signed into law last Friday, so it's only been law for about 4 days. And the Speaker's already talking about another bill that, I think you have to genuinely be aware of the Speaker in a situation like this. I'm reminded of what Rahm Emanuel said during the financial crisis: never let a crisis go to waste. What that meant was seize on the crisis to try to achieve unrelated policy items that you have not been able to get under other circumstances. So I would think any kind of bill coming out of the House, I would look at, like Reagan suggested, we look at the Russians: trust but verify.
Now, the Speaker has announced that she's working on phase 5, and I thought to myself, that's not going to fly. Phase 1 and 2 came out of the House. Phase 3 came out of the Senate. Any phase 4 would have to be a joint effort. Is there any plan to undertake a joint effort, Leader McConnell?
Well, I think first we need to see what the effect of the current bill is. The Treasury, of course, is wrestling with all this complicated effort to speed checks to individuals and small businesses to get us through this period until the healthcare pandemic begins to subside. And so I think we need to wait a few days here, a few weeks, and see how things are working out. She hasn't suggested the House would even come back into session until the 20th of April, and I've said the same thing. So let's see how things are going and respond accordingly. But I'm not going to allow this to be an opportunity for the Democrats to achieve unrelated policy items that they would not otherwise be able to pass.
I hear you. Leader, I want to touch about pandemic bonds. I know the president's intrigued by them. The Treasury doesn't have to have authority to issue them. Do you think we ought to try and involve citizens in this effort to pay for all the public health infrastructure that's got to stand up?
I think it's an interesting idea, and we're looking at every idea that people can participate. And I think what the way the American people have responded to this is really inspirational. I mean, people reaching out and helping others, not to mention the heroic healthcare workers who are exposing themselves to this public health. By taking care of these sick patients, I think the country is responding in a way that is reminiscent of the attitude and after 9/11, and it's really, as I said, inspiring to all of us who've been elected.
Now,
By these wonderful people.
I have watched almost every minute of the president and the task force briefings in the Rose Garden. I like the fact that he brings the public sector forward. Yesterday, he brought forward Mike Lindell, who I know is a sponsor of this show. He's on Fox a lot, and so he got hammered by the left. What do you think of criticism of the private sector that is turning as one to assist the government in the effort to beat this pandemic? I just think they should be celebrated, but that's not happening.
It underscores the attitude of the political left that if you're making a profit, you must be up to no good. You know, there are heroes in the private sector who are wonderful people who are stepping up, and every one of these companies that's stepping up, I bet many of them are not going to make any money off of what they're doing. A great company in my hometown, Humana, a health insurance company, just decided to waive co-payments. That's going to cost them a significant amount of money. We applaud it, and I think putting the private sector that's stepping up on full display is the right thing to do. I applaud the president for doing it. I think we should all applaud these private sector companies who are stepping up to help us deal with this crisis.
I'll come back to that in the president in a second. Let me ask about Kentucky, Senator. I'm on in Louisville, Lexington. I'm on all across the Bluegrass State, but I am unaware of what Dr. Burke said. Every single metro area will be impacted severely by this disease. How is Kentucky handling it?
I think is responding well, and we are being impacted like everyone else. And the cases have appeared all over the state. Obviously, more cases in the more heavily populated urban areas of Louisville and Lexington, but in other areas as well. And our state is, everyone is staying at home and making the best of it, and we're going to do everything we can to bend the curve.
Now, I want to talk to you about the nature of media, not to bash on the media. They're all my friends. I know most of the people standing up in the Rose Garden and getting into back and forth with the president. I just think that the lens that the media has been operating through since 2015 of President Trump versus them is not appropriate right now. Are you hopeful that the media can reconsider and adjust its lens to the fact that this is a national emergency in which red-blue doesn't really matter?
I wouldn't bet on it. Did you see the Gallup poll last week? Congress, which hasn't had a favorable rating, I don't believe, since right after 9/11, 59% approved, 37% disapprove, and the worst numbers were the media, down in the 40s. American people are sick and tired of all the negativity, and the Democrats, it seems to me, want to turn the president's handling of all this into a political liability for him. I see he's getting attacked in campaigns. Goodness, I wish we could all just turn this off, until we get to a period where we bent the curve and are beginning to get back to normal. I don't expect that's going to happen, however.
I hope you are right that we could do it and that we do it. Let me talk to you a little bit about Senator Cotton. Politico yesterday recognized him as the first to the bell. In your experience in the Senate, was Senator Cotton the first one to say, hey, leader, hey, Mitch, this is a deadly situation I do not trust first?
He was first, and I think Tom was right on the mark, and it came up while we were, tied down in the impeachment trial. And I think it diverted the attention of the government because everything, every day was all about impeachment. But Tom figured this out early, and he was absolutely right.
And China has not covered itself in glory. Far from it. I believe, however, a lot of our media is trusting their statistics and falling for their disinformation propaganda campaign. Do you see that, Senator McConnell?
I don't know how to evaluate that. I sort of look to the healthcare professionals to decide, how to analyze these trends. And I know they're spending all day, every day doing it. Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx have become national figures. They deserve to become national figures, and I think we have to listen to them because we don't have anybody else, who can analyze these statistics and give us some kind of advice about the way forward.
Last question, Senator McConnell. How do you think the president is doing in leading the country in this crisis, indeed the world?
I think the president's doing very, very well, and even his critics, again, going back to the Gallup poll last week, he had a 60% approval rating on handling the coronavirus, and in that 60% were 27% of the Democrats, which is something the president has not had from the beginning of his term. He's had very poor ratings among Democrats. So I think when 27% of Democrats who've been extremely resistant to anything the president does for 3.5 years say he's doing a good job on this, that ought to tell you something. I think he'll keep it up, and I'm proud of the way he's been handling it.
Now, Senator, I've never done an interview with you without bringing up judges. So you got a Fifth Circuit nominee yesterday. When the Senate comes back, will you be acting on Part 2? Have you heard anything about any retirements from the Supreme Court?
I've heard nothing about any retirements at the Supreme Court, but of course we will go back to judges. Hugh, you and I have talked about this before. My motto for the rest of the year is leave no vacancy behind.
I am looking forward to the return of normalcy and back to business. Senator McConnell, thank you for joining me. Keep coming back. I appreciate your leadership last week.
Thanks, Hugh.
I do.